too wild to handle. Nürburgring Nordschleife, Germany. The Nürburgring Nordschleife, or simply the Green Hell, was the most feared and admired circuit in Formula One history. Built back in 1927, this nearly 23-kilometer monster winds through the dense forests and rolling hills of Germany's Eifel Mountains, featuring over 160 corners. What made this track legendary was its relentless unpredictability. Sudden changes in elevation, blind apexes, and incredibly narrow roadways meant one wrong move could end a driver's day, or worse. Weather conditions were famously chaotic. It wasn't uncommon for one part of the circuit to be dry while another was soaked in heavy rain, making tire choices a high-stakes gamble. Everything came to a dramatic head on August 1st, 1976, during the German Grand Prix. Early into the race, reigning champion Niki Lauda suffered a horrific crash when his Ferrari snapped loose and slammed into a barrier at over 300 kilometers per hour, turning into a blazing inferno. Rescue teams couldn't reach him quickly enough due to the circuit's massive scale, and Lauda was left fighting for his life. Miraculously, he survived, but the crash exposed the Nordschleife's dangers beyond denial. Following that disastrous day, Formula One said goodbye to the Green Hell, moving the German Grand Prix permanently to Hockenheim from 1977 onwards. Avis, Germany. Built originally as a test track near Berlin in 1921, Avis wasn't your usual twisty racing circuit. Imagine this: two incredibly long parallel straights connected by two tight hairpins. Each straight was nearly 10 kilometers, making Avis essentially just two flat-out drag strips joined together. At first glance, this might seem ideal. High speeds? Check. Overtaking opportunities? Definitely. But racing at Avis was anything but easy. The cars would reach insane speeds, sometimes over 380 kilometers per hour. To put that into perspective, modern Formula One cars barely touch 350. However, the real madness came from the North Curve. Drivers nicknamed it the Wall of Death, and for good reason. The slightest mistake here would send cars airborne, often with tragic results. Formula One came to Avis just once in 1959. That weekend, French driver Jean Barra was tragically killed in a supporting sports car race at the same corner. Even the legendary Stirling Moss called Avis a joke, fast but not fit for Grand Prix racing. The banked North Curve was dismantled in 1967, and professional racing completely stopped by 1998. Montjuic Park Circuit, Spain. Montjuic Park wasn't just a Formula One track. It was a roller coaster ride through the heart of Barcelona. It opened in 1933 and quickly gained a reputation for being both stunningly beautiful and alarmingly dangerous. Picture Monaco, but faster, steeper, and surrounded by trees instead of yachts. Montjuic first hosted Formula One in 1969, alternating the Spanish Grand Prix with Jarama until 1975. Throughout its short tenure, safety concerns constantly overshadowed its appeal. Temporary guardrails hastily installed each year were notoriously unreliable. Drivers often complained they were loose and dangerously inadequate. These fears tragically came true at the 1975 Grand Prix. Just before the race, many drivers, including reigning champion Emerson Fittipaldi, refused to compete, citing dangerously poor barrier construction. Despite these protests, the race went ahead. On lap 26, disaster struck. German driver Rolf Stommelin's rear wing snapped, launching his car over the barriers into a crowd. 4 spectators were killed instantly, and many more injured. This tragic event spelled the immediate end for Montjuic Park. Formula One never returned, deeming it far too dangerous. Charade Circuit, France. Located near Clermont-Ferrand in France, it opened in 1958. Charades twisted through volcanic hills with rapid elevation changes and tight corners. At just over 8 kilometers in length, its layout resembled Germany's legendary Nordschleife. The advantage? Pure driving pleasure and adrenaline. Safety was another persistent issue. Rocks often fell onto the track from surrounding hills, and debris became a serious risk. Formula One arrived at Charade in 1965, with Jim Clark clinching victory. The circuit held 4 Grands Prix in total: 1965, 1969, 1970, and 1972. The tipping point came in 1972. During the race, driver Helmut Marko, now famous as Red Bull's motorsport advisor, was severely injured when a stone thrown up by another car pierced his visor, permanently blinding him in one eye. After this tragic accident and mounting safety concerns, Formula One never returned to Charade. Urban legends. Detroit Grand Prix. Detroit, the heart of America's auto industry, joined the F1 calendar in 1982. But instead of a sleek, permanent track, it offered a rough, unforgiving street circuit winding around the city's Renaissance Center. 17 tight corners, bumpy tarmac, manhole covers, and 90-degree turns turned every lap into a test of survival. The layout favored mechanical grip over aerodynamics, which gave underdog teams a rare shot. Still, Detroit delivered drama. Ayrton Senna won back-to-back here in '86 and '87, showcasing his street circuit genius. But by 1988, teams were fed up. Logistics were awful, surface quality deteriorated, and TV coverage suffered from the ugly visuals of fenced concrete and empty lots. F1 pulled the plug in 1989. The U.S. Grand Prix moved to Phoenix, Dallas Grand Prix. In 1984, Formula One headed to Dallas, Texas, aiming to charm American fans with speed and glamour. Stretching 3.9 kilometers with tight 90-degree turns, short straights, and unforgiving concrete walls. On paper, it promised close, wheel-to-wheel action, rewarding drivers with sharp reflexes. But reality quickly set in. Temperatures soared over 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, causing the asphalt to break apart under the powerful F1 cars. Drivers struggled not only to stay on the track, but simply to finish the race. Nigel Mansell famously collapsed from exhaustion after heroically pushing his car over the finish line. The race was chaotic from start to finish. Keke Rosberg won, but only 8 of the 26 starters saw the checkered flag. The heat was so brutal that Ayrton Senna described the race as inhuman. By 1985, the Dallas Grand Prix was off the calendar for good. Caesar's Palace Grand Prix. In the early 1980s, Formula One made a gamble, literally, by hosting a race in the glamorous heart of Las Vegas. But instead of racing down the famous strip, cars competed in a makeshift track laid out in the Caesar's Palace Hotel parking lot. First introduced in 1981, the circuit was just 3.65 kilometers long, flat as a pancake, and featured a repetitive, confusing layout filled with tight corners and chicanes. Nelson Piquet even suffered heat exhaustion after clinching his first world championship here in 1981. Attendance dwindled quickly, and the event never captured the glitz and excitement expected of a Las Vegas showdown. After just 2 years, Formula One left Vegas behind. Valencia Street Circuit. In 2008, Formula One made its ambitious debut on the streets of Valencia, Spain. The circuit, named the Valencia Street Circuit, promised to deliver Monaco-style glamour mixed with modern track design. Stretching 5.42 kilometers through the city's picturesque marina, the circuit boasted 25 corners, tight hairpins, and high-speed straights that theoretically should have produced thrilling races. But reality told a different story. The track became infamous for extremely limited overtaking opportunities. Despite hosting 5 races, including memorable moments like Fernando Alonso's emotional victory in 2012, it quickly earned a reputation for processional, dull races. The global economic crisis severely impacted Spain, leading organizers into financial difficulty. Valencia quietly vanished from the calendar after the 2012 season. Ghosts of Glory. Ramsgau Circuit. In the heart of France's Champagne region lies the legendary Ramsgau Circuit, a track etched into motorsport history since its creation in 1926. At its peak, Ramsgau stretched over 8.3 kilometers, characterized by blistering straights connected by only a handful of challenging corners. The layout provided plenty of overtaking opportunities, making races genuinely exciting. It quickly became a favorite for both drivers and fans, with Formula One legends such as Juan Manuel Fangio and Stirling Moss battling wheel-to-wheel at incredible speeds, averaging over 200 kilometers per hour, remarkably fast for the era. As Formula One entered the safety-conscious era of the late 1960s, Ramsgau started to feel increasingly outdated. The track held its final Formula One race in 1966, won by Australian legend Jack Brabham. Buenos Aires, Argentina. First appearing on the F1 calendar in 1953, the Autódromo Juan y Oscar Galvez hosted races across 5 different decades. The circuit saw legends like Juan Manuel Fangio and Ayrton Senna, from tight 3-kilometer layouts to longer 6-kilometer versions with sweeping straights. Its layout wasn't the most exciting, flat and simple in many versions, but it had atmosphere. Fans packed the grandstands in scorching heat, waving Argentine flags and watching their heroes battle under the summer sun. But the track aged poorly. Safety upgrades were slow, the facilities crumbled, and political instability in Argentina meant inconsistent funding. The final nail came in 1998. F1 quietly dropped Buenos Aires from the calendar. Pedralbes, Spain. Located in the upscale district of Barcelona, the Pedralbes Street Circuit hosted just 2 Formula One Grands Prix in 1951 and 1954. At 6.3 kilometers long, the track featured flat-out straights, long, sweeping bends, and a tree-lined atmosphere that made it feel more like a holiday drive than a brutal race. That was both its charm and its flaw. Cars were rapidly evolving. By 1955, they were faster, louder, and far more dangerous. And that year, everything changed. The Le Mans disaster in June 1955 killed over 80 spectators. It sent shockwaves through motorsport. Spain, like many other countries, began re-evaluating its street circuits. Pedralbes never hosted another Grand Prix. Deserted by F1. Yeongam, Korea. The Korean Grand Prix was supposed to be Formula One's next big move into Asia. The Korea International Circuit in Yeongam debuted in 2010. Designed by Hermann Tilke, it was a 5.6-kilometer hybrid circuit, part permanent, part street layout, built in the middle of reclaimed marshland. The circuit was built far from major cities, making access a nightmare for fans, teams, and media. The promised motorsport city around the track never materialized. Hotels were scarce, and some teams had to stay in love hotels just to be close. By 2013, the event was on life support. The 2014 race was quietly dropped from the calendar. Political instability, financial losses, and lack of local interest buried Korea's F1 dreams. Bood International Circuit, India. Designed by Hermann Tilke, the 5.14-kilometer track featured a mix of elevation changes, high-speed corners, and one of the longest straights in F1 at 1.06 kilometer. Drivers praised it. Even Sebastian Vettel called it one of the best new circuits on the calendar. On track, the racing was solid. Red Bull dominated all three editions, with Vettel winning from 2011 to 2013. But off the track, things unraveled. India's bureaucratic red tape hit hard. F1 was classified as entertainment instead of sport, leading to massive taxes on equipment, tickets, and revenue. Political disagreements between F1 management and local authorities only added fuel to the fire. By 2014, the race was gone. Istanbul Park, Turkey. Built by Hermann Tilke and funded by the government, the track was located on the Asian side of Istanbul. It was a serious investment, over $200 million, and it showed. The layout, fast, flowing, and punishing. Drivers loved it. Even Lewis Hamilton once called it a real driver's circuit. The first race in 2005 saw Kimi Räikkönen take the win, and the track quickly earned respect. But despite the excitement on track, the issues were off it. After the 2011 race, the government stopped supporting the event, and F1 dropped Istanbul Park from the calendar. That could have been the end. But then, in 2020, COVID-19 reshuffled the F1 calendar. Istanbul Park was brought back as a last-minute replacement, and it delivered. The slippery surface combined with rain created one of the wildest races of the decade. Hamilton won and sealed his 7th world title there. Istanbul Park returned again in 2021, but not after that. Kyalami, South Africa. It hosted its first F1 race in 1967, and for decades, it brought Grand Prix racing to the southern tip of the world. Legends raced here: Jim Clark, Jackie Stewart, Niki Lauda, Alan Prost, and Senna. The 1977 race is infamous. Tom Price tragically died after a freak accident with a marshal, a dark chapter in the sport's history. But Kyalami's biggest problem wasn't its layout or safety, it was politics. F1 held one final race at Kyalami in 1985, but by 1986 it was off the calendar, due to the country's political climate, not the racing. Too weird to live. Fuji Speedway, Japan. The circuit opened in 1965, originally intended as a NASCAR-style oval. But financial struggles led to the completion of only one banked corner, creating a unique layout with a dangerously high-speed final turn leading onto a long straight. Fuji first hosted Formula One in 1976, and what a debut it was. Torrential rain soaked the track, and after a long delay, drivers were faced with chaos. James Hunt needed a good finish to secure the title, and Niki Lauda, still recovering from his near-fatal Nürburgring crash, pulled out after just one lap, citing unsafe conditions. Hunt finished third, clinching the championship by a single point. The 1977 race was even darker. A collision on lap 1 killed a marshal and a photographer. That tragedy, combined with safety concerns and the remote location, pushed F1 to abandon Fuji after just 2 races. But in 2007, Fuji returned with a heavily revised Hermann Tilke layout. It hosted F1 again in 2007 and 2008. But after just 2 years, it was gone again. Phoenix, USA. The Phoenix Grand Prix debuted in 1989, replacing Detroit as the new U.S. round. The race was run on a temporary street circuit laid out in the heart of downtown. The layout, flat, bumpy, and boxy. A classic 90-degree corner street track that lacked flow, elevation, and spectacle. On track, however, Phoenix did produce one of the sport's most famous moments. In 1990, a 21-year-old Gene Alesi stunned the paddock by overtaking Ayrton Senna and briefly leading the race in a Tyrrell, before Senna eventually took the win back. But moments like that were rare. Attendance never took off, the atmosphere felt flat, and the U.S. audience didn't connect with the sport the way F1 had hoped. By 1991, the race was gone. TI Circuit, Pacific GP, Japan. Built in 1990, the layout featured tight corners, elevation changes, and a technical rhythm that challenged drivers more than it thrilled fans. The biggest problem? Location. Ada was hours away from any major city, surrounded by countryside. When it was announced that the Pacific Grand Prix would be held there in 1994, the F1 world scratched its head. The first race wasn't bad, but the paddock hated the isolation. The travel logistics were a nightmare, and the fan turnout was underwhelming. The Pacific GP vanished after just 2 races. Dijon-Prenois, France. Dijon-Prenois was built in 1972, located in the Burgundy region of France. The track had some serious advantages. Its fast layout led to close racing, and its location in wine country made for a scenic backdrop. Most notably, in 1979, it hosted the French Grand Prix that saw one of the greatest wheel-to-wheel duels of all time, Gilles Villeneuve and René Arnoux, fighting ferociously for second place. That race alone cemented Dijon-Prenois in F1 history books. But the track also had its flaws. Because it was so short, it created traffic problems in longer races, and its facilities were basic compared to modern standards. By the 1980s, newer circuits with better infrastructure were popping up across Europe, and Dijon couldn't keep up. F1 left Dijon for good, opting for tracks like Paul Ricard and Manicourt in France instead. Maybe one day? Sepang International Circuit, Malaysia. It opened in 1999, designed by Herman Tilke as part of Malaysia's push to showcase itself on the global stage. At over 5.5 kilometers, Sepang stood out for its wide straights, challenging high-speed corners and massive runoff areas, features that made it both safe and spectacular. But Sepang also had downsides. The tropical heat and humidity made it exhausting for teams and fans alike. As Formula One expanded into new Asian markets like Singapore and Baku, Sepang's appeal began to fade. The final Malaysian Grand Prix was held in 2017, ending an 18-year run on the calendar. Paul Ricard, France. Opened in 1970, Paul Ricard was a pioneer of modern track design. Located in Le Castellet, it was funded by drinks magnate Paul Ricard himself and was designed to set new standards for safety and facilities. The track itself was 5.8 kilometers long, featuring the massive Mistral Straight, a 1.8-kilometer blast where cars could reach extreme top speeds before tackling the iconic Scenes Corner flat out. Drivers loved the high-speed challenge and the forgiving layout compared to other tracks of the era. But over time, that forgiving nature became a criticism. Paul Ricard fell off the F1 calendar after the 1990 French Grand Prix. It returned to the F1 calendar in 2018. But criticism about boring races and lack of overtaking persisted. Finally, after the 2022 Grand Prix, Paul Ricard was dropped again, as Formula One shifted focus toward more exciting venues. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more deep dives into Formula One history, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.